Well, good afternoon, everyone. All those this side of the water in the Atlantic, and good evening to those in Ireland and Britain. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're delighted to be here with you. So I'll kick off by saying that I am a J-1 working at the Emerald Isle Immigration Centre, a nonprofit assisting clients with immigration law, as well as providing social and mental health services. My role is primarily centered around marketing and events with the EIIC, including fundraising, grants, and helping J-1s seeking employment in New York City. Before moving here, I completed a Master's of Science in Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Management from Imperial College Business School. And prior to that, I graduated with a law degree from Queen's University, Belfast. Throughout this webinar, I'll be able to share some of my personal experiences navigating the J-1 visa and hopefully provide some advice to make your search a little easier. Next up, I'll be introducing Tom Matteo, an authority in the field of executive leadership and his impact on organizations. With more than 30 years of experience, he is the founder of Sector Group, a leadership development and management consulting firm located here in New York City. Combining his extensive executive coaching expertise with significant management and business consulting experience, Tom's executive coaching zeroes in on the practical aspects, concepts, and applications of leadership. Tom has coached hundreds of senior executives in both Fortune 500 and high-profile mid-sized companies. And so he has a deep understanding of what they look for from both their new hires and employees. Tom holds a Master's of Science in Science of Management from the Sloan School, MIT, along with a bachelor's degree in economics. Next up, we have Sean. Sean is a managing director focused on advising on liquidity, events, independent valuation analysis, restructurings, and business success planning. Prior to Silvercrest, he spent 13 years at Bessemer Trust, where he helped create Bessemer Trust's family company advisory group. He also worked in investment banking within Lehman Brothers Power Group. Sean holds a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of British Columbia and an MBA from the Yale School of Management. He is also a CFA charter holder. Sean is a member of the board of directors for the Irish Business Organisation, as well as the Emerald Isle Immigration Centre and Ireland's Great Hunger Board. He's also a North American ambassador for the Celtic FC Foundation, where he's part of the Founders Club. We'll kick off this webinar addressing some common misconceptions held by J1s, and then Sean and Tom will provide insight on how best to get organized, connected, and noticed when preparing to move to the US and securing a job. And then finally, we'll conclude with a Q&A. So Tom, I'll leave it to you to take it away with our first myth, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. What we found when speaking with so many different J1s is that there are a lot of misconceptions about finding jobs in the US. And so we decided to do this initial section, we call it myth busting, about finding a job. One of the biggest misconceptions we've run into is people have a belief that large firms in some industries will not hire J1s, so there's no reason to apply to a multinational company. Actually, they often have offices in London and elsewhere. Multinationals are very diverse in that regard, and they like diversity of experience for their employees. So I would suggest, if you're interested in, say, a bank or a large multinational, be creative. As an example, if you want a job on a trading desk in New York City, try to network into the same desk in London and see if you can speak with someone there, or even anyone on the trading floor. Trading floors are very tight, small clubs. They all speak to each other. And even across the globe, they all speak to each other. And if you get the privilege of speaking to someone in a trading floor in London and ask them, hey, do you know anyone in New York City I should speak to? More than likely, they'll have some good contacts. And before you know it, your name will be on the other side of the ocean. They'll be talking about you. So it's a harder sell, yes. It's a higher wall to get over. But once you get over that wall, there's much less competition. Those companies love diversity in their employees. Once they bring them on board, I've seen them move them around the globe just to get experience in different cultures. It's a bit harder, but when it works well. I'll give myself as an example. I'm a US executive coach. UK execs often like to work with me because I bring what they would call an American angle to their problems, or an American angle to a situation or scenario. And maybe it's a little more aggressive, maybe it's a little more pointed, but they like that because they lack that and they want to learn another tool set. And working with a US person gives them different experiences that they would not have otherwise. So that would be one of many examples of why, if you're interested in multinationals, go for it. The trick is just try to be creative. Sean, what would be the next one?
The next myth that we've come across is this idea that American firms prefer candidates with a US-based educational background. Now, I guess I'm proof of the pudding. That's not true. I had did my undergrad in Canada, but and I find Americans know a few Canadian schools, but what I really find interesting, and I'll just put this in context, most of the decision makers and senior executives that you'll come in contact with are people who travel and travel a great deal for professionally as well as personally. And I think a lot of people in Ireland will know this, but Ireland has an amazing reputation when it comes to the education system over there. And I'm not just talking about a few names. I'm talking about like across the board. And so when I encounter people and they ask about, oh, I got this resume from this, and take a look at it, and I'll tell people like, oh my gosh, no, like the Irish education system is one of the best. And the proof's in the pudding. Like I'll have people say, "Oh, we hired this person. We weren't sure, but they've proven to be like a star performer." It even happened at Silvercrest last year. So it's this myth is definitely busted. It's simply just not true.
Another one we ran into is if a job is not listed on a company's website or through general job sites, then it doesn't exist. I'll go into this in more detail later, but that is absolutely incorrect. 70% of jobs out there are not found listed anywhere. They're found through word of mouth, they're found through networking, they're found through the techniques we're going to be giving you. So just because you don't see it advertised, just because you don't see it on LinkedIn, believe me, there's 8 million stories in New York City, there's 8 million people, and there's 8 million different opportunities, and you can find something that will fit you. Another myth is if you don't hear back after a few days, whether it's you sent in a resume or you had an interview, you didn't get the job. There's a real process here. It can take some time. So if they're looking at resumes, they may wait for 2 weeks to get the allotted resumes and maybe look at the top 10. And then they decide, okay, let's see these 5 people. If they're interviewing, maybe they interviewed 5 people. That takes some time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, before they decide, hey, this is the candidate we want to bring back. So what you want to do, whether you sent in a resume or you did an interview, is assume that you're in the game. Make sure you send thank yous. Make sure you maybe touch base in a few weeks. How is the process going? Can I give you any other information? That type of proactive touching base goes a real long way. And just don't assume things went flat because you haven't heard anything for a little while. Sean, how about the next one?
The next one, don't bother following up after interviews. Nobody reads those thank you notes. I can tell you, I read every single thank you email, note that I ever have. And I don't think people understand the level of importance that not just a thank you note, but a very thoughtful thank you note that just says, thanks for your time. And that's the bare minimum, and thanks for your time, but also talk about some insights that you were able to gather from that meeting and so forth. And then just basically, if it's for a job specifically, want to basically reemphasize my interest in this position. If it's an informational interview, looking forward to maintaining contact with you or seeing you at an Irish community event. But they're absolutely critical, to the point where if I have an interview with someone and it's a great interview and they don't send the thank you note, the implication is basically, I don't appreciate your time. So I would take thank you notes extremely seriously. And I believe this gets into the first of the 3 gets. This is the get organized. So your basic preparation and organization. So this one is more of a stress reduction. Prior to leaving Ireland, how can when you get here, want to get here and just be on the go. And one of the biggest stressors we found in talking to J1s is finding accommodation. Now, you can do it from Ireland. Maybe you have friends here who can help you out, or what have you, or there's a real estate professional that you can be put in touch with. But the first step is, what's my budget? Because that's going to dictate where in and around Manhattan. Manhattan is very expensive, so not a lot. I find not a lot of J1s have the funds to do that. But first of all, have your budget. Figure out parts of the city that can meet your budget, and then number two, figure out the logistics. Okay, you want to be close to public transport because you want to be able to get into your job. This is assumption that a job's in Manhattan might not be, but the logic applies no matter where. Just kind of figure out sort of like, okay, do I really want to spend an hour on the train each way, or is 45 minutes good, or what have you? But get that figured out fairly quickly. Another area and this seems obvious, but is you might have your resume as it is in Ireland, but you're going to be coming over here. So you want your resume to be a US looking type of resume. I've had, folks send me resumes that are 3 to 4 pages long. Mine's only 1 page. So that's kind of how it is here for the most part. You have your, professional statements, your work experience, your education, and extracurricular activities. That one at the bottom, by the way, is actually very important because it gives people a sense of who you are. It humanizes you. So you go from being a candidate to an actual person. So that's a big deal. Another one is LinkedIn update. Now, if I've noticed a lot of recent graduates in Ireland, they have the cap and gown photo, and that's great, and you should take great pride in terms of your accomplishment. I think it was my second job I had a person pull me aside because I was gunning for a position, and he said, Sean, he goes, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. And this applies to the LinkedIn, because if they get your resume and they go to LinkedIn and they see basically a student photo, it's just going to register this is a student. If you put in a professionally done photo of yourself, they're going to look at it and say this is someone in the workforce. This is a professional. And so I would invest the time and energy to make that adjustment. Also, if within your industry you have work to show, whether it's in the arts or entertainment or what have you, it's no harm in actually putting together your own personal website if you don't already have one, and sort of listing your portfolio of work. It doesn't really apply within the world of finance per se, but yeah. A couple of action items I think are really important is getting not only just your own personal business cards, but getting your personal stationery. Now, you might say to yourself, business card, well, it's just going to have my contact information. Well, when you come over here and you're going to different events, whether it's through your county or the Irish community in general, and if you have a business card and you're having a chat with someone, it shows a level of maturity and thoughtfulness that really has an impact on people. And frankly, not a lot of people do it. So I would highly recommend doing that. And the personal stationery, again, it's just that nice touch for the thank you notes and whatever correspondence you'd like to have. Tom?
Okay, next we're going to talk about getting connected, networking American style. So networking here is, in my opinion, different than it might be in Ireland. Some just interesting facts: up to 85% of jobs gotten here are gotten via networking. 70%, as I mentioned before, of jobs here are never published. So you want to really use your network to get out and to find the sort of job you're looking for. LinkedIn is a really valuable tool. You want to use it correctly, though. It's great for networking, but it's not great for job searching. As an example, LinkedIn jobs posts, they have less than a 3% success rate. And that's if you're not a J1. If you're J1, it's about a 1% success rate. I would use LinkedIn for a job if I had a very specific niche or skill, say an Italian law translator. Then it may be worth it because you actually have to fit your resume to that job description, and then it might be worth it to send in. If it's something very specific where few people have the skill, yes, go after it. But otherwise, you want to use LinkedIn for networking and really focus on that. I would really keep away from using it for actually looking for a job. The cost benefit, it's just not worth it. Just some key items. You want to make looking for a job a full-time job. It's a little arduous to do, but if you can, right now, starting in Ireland, 4 to 5 days a week, put in 5 to 6 hours a day on the sorts of things we're going to be speaking about, you will be eons ahead of everyone else, and you will get the type of job you want. Another key item would be, it's all about connecting with people directly. So emails are fine, technology is fine, virtual Zooms eventually are going to be a way to connect, but eventually you want to connect with people in person when you're here. So let's talk about how to make that happen. The first thing you want to do is you want to inventory your core network of people. What's your current network look like now? Your local clubs, GAA societies, the county associations like County Mayo, County Dublin, County Cork, County Kerry. They have valuable contacts there. Alumni organizations, community clubs. You want to use these networks of people to see who others you can find within Ireland that can bring you to the US or within the US. So take your core network of people, and now let's look at how to grow it further. You want to use sponsors. A lot of you are coming with J-1 sponsors. They'll have contacts. Schools have contacts, friends, coaches, professors. It's ideal if you can speak to more senior people. They tend to have more, or people in leadership. They tend to have more contacts. They tend to have more people you can chat with. You want to build up your list both in Ireland and then in the US to speak to. In Ireland, try to speak to them in person if you can, if not virtually via Zoom. In the US, you want to start to speak to people virtually now, which we'll get into, just to start to extend your network further. And this is where something called an informational interview comes into play. I don't know if you're all familiar with it, but it's a really valuable tool. It's a simple one, and it's just that. An informational interview is just that. You're not asking the person for a job. So it kind of takes the pressure off them. You're asking them about the industry. You're asking them about the work. You're asking them for insights into the industry and what you should be looking at or not. You're looking at ideas from them, ways of approaching it. When I'm in New York, where should I go? Who should I speak to? Informational interviews can run 15 minutes to a half hour. If you get longer, that's great. God bless you. But you want to end it with, if possible, 2 or 3 more referrals. So John, Mary, thank you so much for your input around this marketing type of work. Are there other people here in Ireland or maybe in the US that you know of that I could reach out to? Use your name and just, again, ask them for an informational interview. The informational interview takes the pressure off of them because you're just looking for input. People like to help people. If you put them on the spot for a job, they may not be able to do that. Once they meet you, once they like you, 2 weeks later, some position can open up that they become aware of and they think of you. Or they refer you to 2 or 3 other people, and through them, you end up getting a job. So it's less pressure on the interviewer, and it creates great leads for potential contacts. When you're doing an informational interview, you want to be clear and concise as to what you're seeking. So instead of saying anything in marketing, you want to say something very distinct like digital marketing with a leisure or travel brand. If that's of your interest, be as focused as possible. And then ask them, does that align with what you see out in the market? If not, what would you suggest? You want to constantly be investigating. You want to pick their brains in a way, professional way, to find out what do they see in the field, what's working, what's not, what's hot, what's coming up next. I really like to do A, B, and C. What do you see a young person like myself doing in this field? People love to help in that regard. You're not asking for a huge commitment. You're just asking for their knowledge. And you want to identify and set up, if possible, at least 5 informational interviews related to your focus in the next week. So that means you want to set up 5 Zooms, or if you can meet with someone in Ireland, take the trip, meet with them in person. But you want to get 5 informational interviews going in the next week or so. And then you want to add every week another 3, 4, 5, another 3, 4, 5. After Zooming with US people in particular, now you have a natural way to meet with them in person when you're in the US. So say you're coming in September, you met via Zoom with 20 New Yorkers. In August, you send out emails personally. gee, I'm going to be coming to the US in September. Would love to connect in person. Could we get together for coffee? It's just a natural way to connect with them in person. The more in person you connect with people, the more they're thinking about you, the more they're referring you to other friends, and you will get that job. You want to use email and personal notes if possible for thank yous. So if you're in Ireland, you may want to send them an email and then send them a personal note that you mail to them. If they're in the US and you're in Ireland, you just send them an email, oh, thank you. But when you're here, if they were really helpful, personal notes go a long way. I know Sean mentioned this, but I've seen executives with a personal thank you note sitting on their desk for 2 weeks because they so rarely see it. And they're just so grateful that someone appreciated their time and effort. And now that person's thinking about you for the next 2 weeks. And then let them know over time how their leads panned out in a diplomatic way. Gee, I met with John and Mary and Harry. Mary and Harry had some leads. They referred me to A and B. If you have any other thoughts, please let me know, because they will call those people and try to help you along with them. Eventually, the goal is to meet with as many people as you can as possible. While you're doing this, now you want to also start to add to your list by research. So you can do it for virtually, for virtual interviews, and later for in-person interviews. But you want to research and list all possible events, industry meetups, places and things you can go to when on the ground. For example, we met J1s that found out about IBO and would go to their events, and actually met some people there who referred them to some other people, and they got jobs. So you want to, while you're doing this work in Ireland, while you're doing your in-person Irish interviews, while you're doing your virtual interviews via America, while you're speaking to people in London, if it's applicable for whatever company you want to be doing this research as far as when you hit the ground, events to go to, places to meet people. A final suggestion I would say is you want to form a mutual support circle of other J1s. We have a list of J1s on the website who've joined IBO. You may want to do that too, but you can see the list. We'll try to get you a list of people out there who are interested. You want to share notes. You want to share leads. You want to share apartment leads. Maybe a couple of these other J1s end up being a roommate. You find an American with an apartment with a 3-bedroom, and now you and your friend have a place to stay. It's also a way to hold each other accountable to treating this effort like a full-time job. It is a hard thing to do. It's hard to go out there and you're going to take a share of no's, and it's just hard to be across. The more no's you take, the closer you're going to be to getting some yeses. That's my thoughts on that. Sean, you have a great story about when you started out, and it inspired me when I heard it. So I don't know if you mind repeating it now or at another time.
Well, I'm more than happy to mention it. First job I had out of college, I was a cold caller for a stockbroker in Vancouver. And so it was me, and then you had all these junior brokers who were actual stockbrokers. And I decided, look, I mean, and it was kind of what you kill. So it wasn't, I mean, the base salary was pathetic. So I decided, okay, you know, there's all these lists and everything like that. And I noticed that a lot of the successful brokers at one point in time just pounded the phones, just absolutely pounded the phones. So each day I made it my task of the day to contact 100 different people. And at first it was painful because I wasn't used to the, you know, that level of rejection. Sometimes the rejection was pretty nasty. But over time, it just became like anything else. It's like riding a bike. And what ended up happening is of the 100 each day, I'd get 10 conversations, 5 of interest. So that's 5 times 5 is 25 a week. So that's, you know, 100 in a month. And over time, that adds up. And I think, you know, over the span of 18 months to 2 years, I was able to bring in about $25 million in new accounts, which isn't a big number these days, but, you know, back when I graduated college, that was a big number. And the funny thing is I beat out all the other junior brokers because all they did was stare at their screens and they're too afraid of rejection. And the reality is rejection is it happens on a daily basis. This is just a formalized way of going about it. So there you go. And I think we're getting in, so we've gotten to the get organized, get connected, and now it's about getting noticed. And this is about you becoming your own brand ambassador. And the first thing one has to do, because if you're not an ambassador for yourself, if you're not able to sell your story, what you're looking for, and all that, other people, no matter how many people you meet, they're not going to be an ambassador for you. It's just kind of the way it is. At least that's how I, interact with it. So the best thing to do is, like anything, is to figure out sort of what we call affectionately, your elevator speech. In the span of a minute to a minute and a half, can you tell your story or distinguish yourself from other candidates? And you can actually expand. You can have an elevator speech, you can have a 5-minute speech, whatever the case may be, but really focus on that. And it's not just your educational and work achievements today. It could be the fact that you captained your under 17 county GAA or whatever it was, or you sailed around Europe by yourself with a couple of friends, or something that humanizes you. Instead of just being a resume and a candidate, you become this person, as I mentioned before. And it's really important, because once people get a sense that you're able to become your own ambassador, they're much, much more comfortable, letting other people know, or introducing people to other folks. I had a prospective client up in Detroit, and multi-billion-dollar company, and he finally said yes to having a meeting. This is pre-COVID. So I took a couple of my colleagues. We had a trip to Chicago, and then we went up to Detroit. And they're like, "What do you think's going to happen?" And I said, "I have no idea, but this is clearly a sniff test, because this person finally allocated 45 minutes out of the day. We get there, we just start talking and so forth. We explain who we are and what we do, and literally the person was like, he stopped the conversation, and literally this person's wall, like his whole office, I think he had 3 popes that he was friends with. Like, he was a very well-connected individual. He just stopped me at some point. I think it was 5 or 10 minutes in, and he goes, "I like you." I said, "Okay, that's great. I like you too." And he got on his email, and he basically introduced myself and my 2 colleagues to a dozen people that I never in a million years would have access to. But the reality is, it wasn't as much about me, but me and my colleagues, he could see there was a chemistry there. He could see that we were genuine. And for him, that's all he needed. And then that 45-minute meeting went on to tour around the factory and all that sort of thing. But but having taken the chance, and he's another person that basically I kept on at. But when I eventually got the opportunity, my speech to him about not just myself, but my firm is so concise and resonated with him that it opened up so many other doors. So just as an example that I've actually interacted with. Another thing you're going to find when you come over here is, American culture it's a bit more extroverted than the Irish culture. And I noticed it coming from Canada, because in Canada, if you don't brag, or if you're modest, it's seen as a medal, or just just one of those things. Whereas here, if you don't talk about yourself, no one else is going to do it for you, and everyone's talking. So it's a little bit of a different environment. It can feel a little awkward at first, and I'm not talking about braggadocio or anything like that. But for instance, if you're in an interview and the interviewer somehow skips over something that you feel is really important, feel free to step in and say, "Oh, by the way, you may have missed it, but," whatever it is. That's perfectly fine. And then when communicating within and outside the Irish community, there is no such thing as over communication. I probably have over communicated many, many times in my career. That's because I was taught in investment banking, you just can't over communicate. And the reality is, I've never been reprimanded for over communicating. It's just the way it is here. So yeah. And I think we're transitioning to some key themes to consider. Sure.
And the first one that comes to mind is, don't get stuck in your own head. And I see people do this all the time, where we all tend to have some limiting conversations. What you want to do is do what most people are afraid to do. Send the email to the senior person, or speak to the high level person. And it might be hard to compete with New Yorkers as far as bravado, but the big equalizer, in my opinion, is be passionate. If you're passionate about what you want to do, you're passionate about meeting people, you're passionate about trying to find what would be a good place for you to land, you're passionate about potential work, be authentic, be vulnerable, it goes a long way. It relates directly to what Sean was speaking about with his experience, his story. With getting stuck in your own head, examples I've seen people do, it's a bad time now to look for a job. It's the holidays, it's December, it's summertime. Actually, those can be really good times. There's a young lady actually who's on the call who I think she came here in October, started looking in November. She made a commitment by Christmas time that she wanted to have a job. And it is harder to get hold of people during that time, but the people you get a hold of are more available. Things are more relaxed. They're not crazy with work. They're more paced. So it's actually, she was able to network through the IBO to some other people, and she got her job before Christmas. So when I speak about don't get in your own head, don't get in your own way with stories like that. Another example might be some people feel like no point starting my job search from Ireland, except maybe for some research. That is so incorrect. You can get so much done now with the internet. You can get so much done with Zoom. You can get so much done with what I talked about before, taking your network, filling it out, building it up, speaking with people. When you speak with people with authenticity and just with sincerity, it really goes a long way. And you can do that now virtually if need be. Another one is when you're here or there, don't let the news scare you. Like stories of like, oh, there's mass layoffs. So there's going to be mass layoffs in December. If I was a J-1, I would be thrilled if there was mass layoffs in December, because they're still going to need resources. They're still going to need to hire someone. And J-1s would be less expensive, easier for them to manage in some ways. More of it, they would see maybe more temporary on the books. But it's what seems to be a door closing in one respect really can be a door opening in another respect. So the theme of don't get stuck in your own head is around having positive people around you, get your cohort of J1s, have the right friends and family that you're speaking with, and really listen to the advice of some of these leaders and people you've networked with about next steps, what they think you should do, what should occur. Another theme is momentum. It is hard to get it going. You're actually looking for a job from home in Ireland, but whatever momentum you create, it will grow on itself. It will just continue. You may only get 2 or 3 informational interviews a week. Maybe you get 1, but it will begin to build. You will begin to get better at it. And I promise you, if you take these steps and do them while you're in Ireland, by the time you get to the US, you will have a little motor going of motion, of things to do, of things to happen, and it will just solve itself. You've got to take the steps to build the momentum. The momentum is very valuable. Sean, do you have any on
Yeah,
themes?
one of which is basically this is kind of funny a little bit, but we've all heard about, you know, someone who moves to Ireland become more Irish than the Irish themselves. You know, take that logic and apply it here. You know, if I were to look at successful Irish-born individuals who I met, regardless of what industry, they tend to be more Yank than the Yanks themselves. And I know it's kind of funny, but it's quite true. I mean, I've literally been in situations where, you know, I'll be with someone, and just because they have an Irish accent, they'll say something and they'll get away with it. And I'm like, if I said that, there's no way I would get away with it. I mean, kind of kidding, but at the same time, you know, it's be as aggressive as your American counterparts. And there's nothing wrong with it. And as a good friend of mine, Turlock McConnell often says, being Irish will open doors, but once you're in that door, you got to be an American to land it. Another theme that comes up is, you know, play the Irish card in building your network, introducing yourself as an Irish graduate looking to build your network in the US. And that's just not to, you know, Irish Americans and so forth. That's to anyone, because, you know, I guess one of the benefits of being one of the only Western European nations that hasn't colonized another is that everyone loves the Irish. And even if, you know, they're not Irish themselves, if they're a different ethnicity, they're going to know someone, or they've traveled there, or they had a great experience. And really play the Irish card and don't underestimate the power that it can have.
I'll just reiterate a few points as well that Tom and Sean have made. The time of year really doesn't matter. If you can get through to people, you're going to have their attention. And companies have different budgets. Hiring still continues, even in slow periods, and you will still stand out if you're trying to get hold of them in what is considered like less easier to get hold of people, periods, that kind of thing. Another common myth is there's no point starting your job from Ireland. I would give yourself the best possible chance to secure a position prior to moving over here. The work you put in before you move will make your overall experience in New York so much better. Very busy city. It's really, from my own experience, it's just so much easier to get it done beforehand. And don't let stories of mass layoffs scare you off. The press is intently expect a certain turnover every year. The company may not advertise the position like Thomas mentioned previously, but they'll still be hiring. So I wouldn't limit yourself. Just like with any job search, you will have your highs and lows. I've been in the exact same experiences, and some of you are probably going through at the moment. I would use your youth and excitement of a new experience, a new team, a new culture to land your job. It's very refreshing for hiring managers and potential employers to have these kind of informational interviews with you, and they just love to see it. So you can never be over prepared. I can't emphasize that enough. Like Tom alluded to earlier, getting a job is a full-time job. So putting in the hours and putting in the time, effort, and energy will set yourself up for success. It's going to sound cliche, and I know I was told this a million times, but keep knocking on those doors because one of them will open, and you don't want to close off any opportunities. And just remember that nothing worth doing is going to come easy. I like that kept me going when I was really trying to secure my position prior to coming over here. Avoid the limiting mindset as well. You'll be told of many different things. You'll be maybe told many no's or given rejections. And you may receive more no's than you would like, but you won't remember any of that when you get that one yes, which gets you over here and sets you up for your incredible year ahead of you. So yeah, just try to remember those kind of points. I think that we're now going to transition to our Q&A part of our webinar. Helping out today behind the scenes has been Colleen Barry Conway, who is the secretary for the IBO. Huge thank you for joining us, Colleen. I know you've been working hard in the background to answer our questions. So she'll be reading out some questions that you guys have given in the chat. Thank you for putting those in, and we'll do our best to get those answers.
Thank you, Kira. And I want to thank everyone for adding the comments, especially those who are helping each other out within the chat. That's wonderful. So we have a few questions here. Eddie asked, what is the current common per hour salary for J1s?
I believe sponsoring agencies require at least $15 to $18 an hour, but that would be a per hour basis. And then I think there's like annual salaries as well that can be discussed. That might be something to be in contact with the J1 about, but we can look into that more as well for you.
Great, thank you. We have a couple of questions that are related, and Ronan has said, asked for any advice for cold emailing and messaging Americans with the aim to get more informational interviews. The question started off with noticing having much more success with Irish people than Americans. The only non-Irish person I've had an informational interview was actually Sean. So some advice for cold emailing, messaging Americans. And then a similar question, Jack asked, have you any tips on how we can pitch our unique selling point in interviews when compared to US citizens? So the questions are very similar. So you guys have any advice for that?
I'll take a stab at that. It is a great question. And I do a lot of cold emails in my business still. And the key is you identify the individual, you obviously have your wants, but you got to have something to give. And usually the give is you go through this individual, if they have a podcast, if they've done interviews, if they've published anything, read it. Then take 2 or 3 insights from those materials and as part of your introduction say, look, I came across this article that you did, and I found this very intriguing for the following reasons, and it really resonates with me because of this. You're establishing a relationship right off the bat. So that should increase your hit rate big time. I mean, it has for me. So I never just do the normal sort of, hey, this is who I am and this is what I want. It's here's who I am, here's how you did something that had an impact on me, and I'd like to find out more information from you because I think you're a very intriguing individual. And
the question indicates why it is a full-time job to look for a job. Normal cold calling without using Sean's approach. Sean's approach will up the numbers, I think, greatly. But normal cold calling, you're going to get a 3 to 5% hit rate. So it's not very high. So you got to reach out to 20 people to get one yes. It takes a lot of work. That's what you're doing with those 5 to 6 hours. You're sort of grinding away. It's hard because most of us are not natural salespeople. Salespeople are thrilled when they get a no because they know statistically they're that much closer to the yes. It's a different way of looking at rejection. Sean touched on how rough the rejection can be, but Sean's technique will up it a lot. If you're doing straight cold calling, it's maybe 3%, maybe 5%. You got to work numbers. If you can get any referrals, someone's name who was suggested that I reach out to you, that ups it immensely too. So that's why the more you can use your network to expand your network, to get a name, to reach another name, it goes a long way. If you can get someone to go have an informational interview with you, or not even, but maybe make a connection with you on LinkedIn, and then you look at their connections, there may be an opportunity there where you can go, I see you connected to A and B. I'm a young person, J-1, looking for XYZ. If there's any way you could introduce me to this person just for an informational interview, and or you make the introduction yourself. It's a grind, but those are the ways to do it. But I love what Sean says because it's really qualifying the reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Rory has asked the question, can you use the visa during your undergraduate degree for a summer internship if you arrange an employer? I know that our workshop is geared towards the graduate visa, but this question is about using that undergraduate degree for a summer internship if you arrange an employer in advance.
I'm not 100% sure about it, but I believe so. If you are coming over and doing there's a different type of visa with the J1. There's many different categories within the J1 visa. We're talking specifically more about the J1 grad or the J1 intern visa. But I believe if you're looking to come to New York for the summer period and have an internship, then still being in your undergrad or just graduating from your undergrad works. I believe so.
We had a nice reply in the chat from Ronan. I think there is a different J1 visa called J1 intern for that. You should reach out to a company such as Rian J1 for that. So we have a comment in the chat.
Yeah, Rian is one of the sponsoring agencies that many of you may know used it as the same, and there's a couple of others too. So they would be probably your go-tos to just clarify that.
Those are the questions I have for now. I want to let everyone know that we will be sharing the chat and a follow-up email. Lots of great tips from other people on the call today that if you weren't able to keep up on the chat, no worries. We will share that with you afterwards.
Kiera, do you want to, I don't know how long your summarization was. I don't know if you'd like to do that now. If so, this could be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. One final thing that I'd love to add as well is when I was doing my search, Tom and Sean earlier have spoken about using LinkedIn to your advantage and filter down your results. I've been to Imperial College London and Queen's University in Belfast. I searched for those kind of alumni in New York. I also did the same for UCD, DCU, Trinity. My father's from Dublin, my mum's from Mayo in the West Coast. So I really tried to leverage any kind of contacts that I already had and any new ones I could have. Like both Tom and Sean have mentioned, you're going to put a lot of emails, cold LinkedIn messages out, but you are going to get a certain number back too, and it's those ones that you need to focus on. So yeah, I would definitely try and filter down your results if you're hoping to come to New York. We hope you've enjoyed this workshop. There will be many follow-up events, so keep an eye out on our social media pages, and please feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or emails, and we're here to help you out and use this as a resource. The IBO has a J1 directory on the website where there's also key instructions on how you can become a member, and that's been recently created, so please use it to your advantage, and it's a fantastic resource to have. I know that I've been using it in the past as well, so have a look at those events. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time in your evenings and afternoons to join us, and we wish you the very best of luck in your search. And yeah, thanks again.